Welcome to the Shunned podcast, where we expose religions that use shunning as a tool to control people. Before we get into today's story, let's take care of a little business. First, I'd like to thank everybody that takes the time to leave reviews for both the Shunned podcast and this JW Life. Those two podcasts mean a lot to me, and your reviews help other people to find them and hopefully get the help that they need. Second, there weren't any new patrons this cycle, but I want to thank everybody that supports the podcast. You can do so for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/shunned. You could even get a panda for yourself or join in our monthly online meetup. And the support really means a lot to me. As I first announced in the last episode, I actually have started a new project. It's called the Shunned Recovery Project. What we're doing is we're having online meetings through a live chat service that I use where we can do video and audio chats. So the focus is on recovery and talking about the struggles and celebrating the wins of life after cults. Please go to shunnedrecoveryproject.com, or you can go to the shunnedpodcast.com website and find the days and times for those. They're free to attend, but I do need to hit a certain donation goal to keep putting my time and energy into these things. Right now I'm doing 2 meetings per week, and the days and times change each week to give different people around the world a chance to attend. So if people support it financially through the PayPal link, I'll keep this going, and hopefully, it gets enough support and I can even do more than 2 meetings a week. So if you like this idea, now's the time to show support and get it off to a good start. Also, something that is needed is spread the love about this. If you like the idea of this recovery project and you like the idea of a place where people can meet online and talk about some of this stuff in person through video or audio, please share it. Don't keep it to yourself. Let other people know. Share it in other groups or forums or wherever you go. And also, most importantly, attend and just show up and be present and vulnerable and let's talk about things. And I think that once you try it, you'll like it, and then you'll tell other people about it. So let's go ahead and meet today's guest. Nicole was raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. This is a tough story to listen to, I'm not going to lie, and my heart goes out to her, but she's really overcome a truly traumatic childhood to create a good life for herself. Unlike most people that I interview, she was actually never baptized, but she lived a life as one of Jehovah's Witnesses that needs to be told. There are a lot of patterns in this story that are repeated in many families and in the organization in general. Sheltered from real life, Nicole was in for some rude awakenings, and unfortunately, the most abusive of those awakenings came from her own family. There's really not much I can say that's going to do this story justice, so let's dive in and get to meet this brave lady that had to realize at an early age that she could trust nobody but herself.
So my name is Nicole. I'm 27 years old. I was a Jehovah's Witness, and I am shunned.
All right, Nicole, so how did you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place?
So I was born into it, pretty much. So my parents had started being witnesses again when I was maybe 1 year old. My dad was raised in it, and I believe my mom was raised Catholic. I'm not 100% sure on that. But I know I was pretty much raised in it from birth. I think we had one Christmas when I was maybe 1, and then we were
big time
witnesses after that.
Yeah. So do you know with your mom, did she become a witness as an adult, or do you know what her timeline was?
She became a witness with my dad.
Oh,
so it was because that was my, when she met my dad, and that was his practicing, beliefs, and she went into it because of him.
Gotcha. Yeah, that happens a lot. Your dad's side of the family, does it go back much farther than him?
I have no idea. So I know his parents were devout Jehovah's Witnesses. My grandpa passed away quite a few years ago when I was young, but I know his mom is still alive and she is still a Jehovah's Witness.
Okay.
So I don't know if it started with them. I never met their parents.
Yeah.
But yeah, since my dad is the oldest of 9, I believe, and they were all Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh, really? So did all 9 of them, to this day, are they still witnesses?
Oh, no, for sure not. Definitely not.
Gotcha.
I believe maybe I think I know there's at least two of my aunts that are not Jehovah's Witnesses at this time, and don't believe and have no pursuit in in a witness life.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, that's always, they don't have a super great retention rate, so there's always a
Yeah,
chance that somebody's going to be out somewhere in there. Um,
yeah.
so for you, being, one, basically you're born in, it's all you've ever known. What did it mean to you as you were starting to get a worldview? You don't have one till you're a little older, but as you were starting to see the world around you, what do you remember learning about the world?
I mean, I know growing up, I was so into it and just so proud, to be a witness, and I don't know. I know, it was just, it's definitely a perspective thing, like growing up and kind of realizing, like, whoa, like this doesn't sound. I know growing up, I just remember things just being, in my mind, like that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And even as a child, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why can't we do that? That doesn't make any sense at all. Or why is that wrong? Or, why isn't this wrong? Or, and I've always been, I don't know if it's something that my parents kind of distilled in me that's kind of, different from most witnesses, but I've always been kind of like a free thinker and have my own opinion on things. And they never really stunted that
Wow,
in
that's a
anything,
rare thing. Yeah, that's not something you see a lot.
Yeah.
Especially, if it is there, a lot of times, like you said, it is stunted in other people.
Hmm.
Um, so you had these questions about things. What were some of the things that you questioned? Do you remember like anything that maybe stuck out to you that you thought, well, they say we can't do this, but it really just doesn't make sense, and they've given me an answer and that doesn't make sense either.
Yeah, I know there were just some things of, like I think one thing that really stuck out with me, because I know, growing up, I think, when I was younger, 5 to, maybe, when I was old enough to answer questions at the meetings and stuff like that, I was so into it and I was so proud, and I felt like, I felt good, being able to answer the questions at the meetings and the comments, and that was like my favorite thing to do, and I was so into it, and I was just so adored upon, in the hall because I was such a good little witness. And but I know once I started getting, I don't know if maybe I was like maybe 10 or something. I remember just thinking, how do you know this is the truth though? Like, how do
Mhm.
you know if God didn't, how do you know that those are God's words in the Bible? And well, we just know.
But
But
the
how do
the
you
Bible
know
says
though?
it's true.
Like, how do you, where's like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
how do you really know?
right.
Because
Yeah.
anyone can just, make anything up and say that it's God. Like, how do you really know? And I remember that really kind of, I kind of had trouble dealing with that because I was just like, how do you know?
Yeah,
There's,
I remember thinking the same thing, about like the Quran and things like that when I finally became old enough to realize that there were these other holy books. Like, why? How do we know that one's not right?
yeah. And I
Because
remember
it says
thinking
it's
about
right
that too.
too.
And,
Yeah,
any other religion, they, feel the same way that we feel. So aren't, we're all kind of the same. Like, who knows, how do we know that our book is really the one?
yeah,
But what if, what if it's theirs?
right.
So
I know. I remember asking my mom one time, well, how come I got so lucky as to be born into a family that was A, in America, where Christianity is the dominant religion, B, into a family where we happened to move next door to Jehovah's Witnesses, and suddenly my parents became that. So I got by default to learn the quote truth. And then there are people who are born in other countries where maybe the Quran or Islam or I don't know what the Hindu holy books are called or Buddhist or whatever, but they have entire cultures that are different than ours. And if I was born there, the chances of me taking to the quote truth would be very low. That doesn't seem
yeah.
fair.
Yeah, and I remember thinking too, what if someone's just living their life, and and what if they're a child and they don't, no one's ever told them about Jehovah's Witnesses and they've never met a Jehovah's Witness. So why did they have to die at Armageddon?
Oh, but you
You
just
know, they
leave
didn't
that in
have, they didn't
Jehovah's
know.
hands. I know, I know. I know. That's where they teach you those, those overarching answers that are just catch-alls for things like, well, just trust Jehovah to take care of it.
Exactly.
What's that mean? It just means to have faith in something else and to not think it through. Um,
Yeah.
so, growing up, it sounds like you were a questioner, but you were also kind of looked at held in some regard for the fact that you were commenting at meetings and involved. What was life like? Let's just say at the Kingdom Hall. Let's start there. What was life like for you at the Kingdom Hall growing up? How were you treated there, and how'd you feel?
So I mean, so it kind of has two parts to it. So
Right.
as a child, I mean, everyone loved me. I loved everyone. We actually grew up in a really small town.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, a population of, I don't know, 7,000 people. It was a really small town. Everybody knew everybody.
Mm.
Everyone knew everyone in the town. So if I was, I don't know how to put it other than everyone was really, really close.
Yeah.
So, in the summers we were all spending time at each other's house, and spending time as families. Like my parents were a married couple, and we would go over to the other married couple, and then in the religion's home, and we would have dinners and barbecues, and we would go fishing, and we would go do everything, go to the lake, go camping. And my dad's brother actually lived in the same town as us as well. So we had actual, family
Mm-hmm.
in the area. And he was a witness as well with his family. So growing up, I mean, for the first half, so maybe from, birth to maybe 13, it was great. I loved it. I loved my parents. I loved the hall. I loved commenting. I loved Jehovah.
Mm-hmm.
I was, I was, loved by everyone in the hall.
Yeah, it sounds like you had good
So I mean,
association too, or you had friends, and you
mhm.
were included in things, which is all isn't something that some kids happen to get. So that sounds rather idyllic, to be honest.
Yeah, and I mean, my early childhood, it was great. I mean, we went on vacations. We went to Hawaii. We went to all these fun places, and we did like a group vacation where it was like 14, 15 witness couples, and we all went to
Wow.
like a tropical area, and we had like a 2-week vacation, and their
Wow.
kids were
Usually,
there, and I mean, it was great as
usually
a
when those
child.
yeah that's rare. When usually when you hear of families getting together and going on vacation, it's like going to visit Bethel or something
Yeah.
like that. You
Yeah.
don't hear about people going to tropical islands together. That's pretty great.
Yeah, I mean, as a child, it was awesome. And then, when I hit puberty, that's kind of when everything just kind of, it was just like a light switch, just
Yeah.
completely black and white, completely separate, completely different.
So what? Well, let me first ask. So you kind of painted a picture of your home life and at the Kingdom Hall and all your friends and everything. Where did you go to public school or were you homeschooled? How was school for you?
I went to public school, and I know there was only a few times where I think in the beginning in elementary school, I was extremely proud to be a witness.
Yeah.
And then I remember in 5th grade, I don't know if the teacher just didn't like me or if she didn't like Jehovah's Witnesses or what, but she had, I mean, nonstop just ridiculed me about being a witness. Um, she would force me to do the Pledge of Allegiance,
Mm-hmm.
um, force me to participate. I know there was like an Easter activity that she had required me to partake in. And I know my parents found out about it, and they actually came down to the school, and like it was a big thing.
Yeah, you
Um,
can't go against people's religious freedom.
yeah,
And I understand from a teacher's perspective that they're probably frustrated or maybe they have their own bad experiences with witnesses or something, but don't take it out on children.
yeah, and for me it was just confusing because I was just like, why do you hate them so much? And I think that might have been kind of the door where I kind of opened my eyes a little bit to like, wow, like this lady really hates Jehovah's Witnesses. Like, for what, there has to be a reason for that. And so I know after that, I really kind of kept being a witness as under wraps as possible.
Yeah, I mean,
Just
nobody wants to lead with something that has gotten them negative consequences.
Yeah, yeah, and I know, and I mean, fifth grade, and then so we were in elementary, although I was in elementary all the way up until fifth grade, and then sixth grade was the beginning of middle school, and from there, right around sixth grade, that's kind of right when I hit, puberty, and that's kind of when I started realizing, like, it's not really cool to be a Jehovah's Witness, and people, my peers aren't really gonna think that I'm cool as one of those, so that's that in part as well. Just from there, I kind of realize, like, okay, let me just keep this to myself.
Yeah, that's interesting. That it's around those years when you're really starting to notice yourself, and teenagers want to fit in, and it really, you start getting that pressure, whereas in elementary school it may not be quite as intense. So you can see why that would make you start to shy away from it a little bit. So how did things then, as you went into your teenage years, how did things progress? How did you start to change?
I know, just I wanted to fit in, just so bad with my friends, and I realized that once I hit puberty, I mean, there was a whole, there was really a whole lot of events that kind of took place to kind of shift there from my home life and everything. But I know in elementary, I was just, I mean, I was literally, preaching to my classmates about being a witness and bringing their bringing their parents to the hall. And then once I got into sixth grade, I was like, okay, I'm kind of starting, I'm starting to like boys now, and I'm starting to want to hang out with people, and I want to, you know what I mean? And I just kind of, at home, and I feel like my parents probably noticed it too, I just kind of started pulling away a little bit. And I mean, not so much in my middle school years as much as my high school years. That's
Yeah,
when it really kind of took a turn for the worse, I
that's
guess you could
normal.
say.
Yeah.
But it was just kind of that middle school period was just really a transition of like me trying to figure out, do I want to be cool, or do I want to, be preaching to my friends like I'm supposed to? Because that's what I was supposed to do. Because I mean, literally anyone that would listen, you're going to tell them that you're a witness, and you're going to give them witness information, and you're going to, go over Jehovah and all of that with them as much as they'll listen. Um,
Yeah, kids are great, are great evangelizers for the
yeah, they are
witnesses.
for sure. I was definitely one of them. I was a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, middle school is hard enough anyway. You've got awkward teenagers going through hormonal changes, trying to figure out themselves. Things are happening to them. You're starting to get some independence. You're trying to fit in with people. Middle school is just the worst, and I think we can most humans agree on that. But
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was definitely a transitional period there.
yeah, it's really tough. So, usually somewhere in your teenage years, you're starting to think about dedication and baptism. When did that happen for you? Kind of what was the lead up to that?
It's kind of weird. So I know with a lot of stories that I hear, my parents were kind of different. So I was never pressured
Yeah.
to be baptized, from what I recall. Um, I know as a child, seeing other children do it at like 9 or 10, I
Hmm.
wanted to so bad, but I remember my parents not allowing me to take that step. And I don't know why. And I don't know why they never pressured me to do that.
Hmm.
I know my mom didn't even get baptized until I think I was maybe 10
Oh,
before
wow.
she got baptized.
Wow.
Yeah.
So then when did you get baptized, or
No, I actually never got
you never got
baptized.
baptized?
Mm-mm.
Wow. So that's interesting. It's not something that a lot of people skate through. I imagine that your mother kind of taking a while to make that decision for herself uh, probably impacted the way that they saw you regarding dedication and baptism,
Mm-hmm.
which probably helped them not to put pressure on you, and it's probably part of their personality or just who they are. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so you weren't baptized. How did your life progressed then as you started getting toward high school and young adulthood?
I know, so I know when I think it was maybe the middle, let me see here, sixth or seventh grade.
Hmm.
I had a really good friend, and she was a witness as well. And so that was my best friend. And I remember in high school in freshman year, so this was, mind you, that it was a super small town. So, I mean, the witness congregation, I think they called it the North and the South. So the North was maybe, maybe like 50 people, and the South was maybe 50 people as well. That would go, at different times. So
Why
I
didn't
think
they
we were
just combine? That's not that many people.
yeah, no, and well, the Kingdom Hall was really small as well.
Oh,
So,
gotcha.
so there was only, we would have, our meetings first and then their meeting after, something like that. I don't really remember
Yeah.
exactly how that played out, but I know she was, my best friend, and we started going to high school together. And I think I had one other really, really good friend in the hall, and she was split between our hall and the hall that her father went to, I believe, or I don't know if her father wasn't a believer, but um, pretty much kind of what changed there was as soon as I got to high school, that's kind of when I noticed, like, wow, like this is really a change, like um, I realized that I was extremely sheltered,
Mm.
and I had no concept of how the real world worked, or how, you know, how I wouldn't say normal, but how regular worldly children talked and experienced things. And I quickly realized, like, I know nothing
Wow. So I
of
have to ask, so what made you realize that? I mean, was it because, I mean, I assume these were the same kids you went to school with in middle school in general. So,
not
oh
necessarily.
no.
There was it's a really small town, but there's two middle schools. So
Okay.
both of the middle schools combine into the high school.
Gotcha. So then you were around new kids, and is that kind of what shook you awake? Did they have different lives that, or was it just the change in life? I mean, because as you're going into those years going into high school, kids are just different, period. I mean, you're all growing and thinking about different things.
Yeah, well, and I know in middle school, I didn't really have many friends because I wasn't allowed to.
Oh, okay.
Um, if they're not a witness,
Right.
I never had any sleepovers, or I didn't have, friends to hang out with after school. The middle school was probably about an hour walk to my home, and I made that walk every day.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and it's kind of cool the way it works out because it's a really small town. So if you're walking home from the high school or if you're walking home from the middle school, it's just like groups of kids, because it's such a small town. So we all start off as a, big old huge group, and then we just kind of break off, one by one as we get to our house, and then we keep going. Um, but I know in middle school, I didn't really have any friends. I kind of stuck to myself. I had a few, a few, like, maybe I can't even remember their names. That's how good of friends they were to me in middle school. um, but I know it was really just, if they're not a witness, they're not your friends. And I didn't necessarily have any friends that went to middle school with me that were witnesses as well. All of my friends that came along and, later on, they went to a different school, or we only knew each other because of the Kingdom Hall.
Gotcha.
And so I know in middle school, I think that's kind of when it started. So that's when I kind of started realizing, like, this isn't normal, and this isn't like something that I like. Because I know my parents, I think maybe my dad had gotten a new job or something, so he couldn't pick me up from middle school anymore. I had to walk home,
Hmm.
and it was about an hour walk. And so I know they had gotten me a cell phone. And at that point, this was, I don't know how many years ago it was quite a while ago. So they had flip phones, and they had gotten me a flip phone, and it was a fully functioning one. It's not one of those ones where you can only dial like two numbers. It was a fully functioning flip phone. And I just thought I thought I was hot shit with that cell phone. And so,
was it a Motorola Razr?
Yeah, and so I know, and this is the thing. So I know one girl that I was really close friends with. She introduced me to kind of the world of online chat rooms and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a witness, and so that I was allowed to hang out with her, and I was allowed to be around her, and we, we were really close. And I just remember she always treated me like crap.
Mm.
But she's a witness, so she's really the only one I can hang out with. So I kind of dealt with it, but I know she had introduced me to this like online game. I forgot the name of it. I think it's called like, it's where you have like pets and stuff. Oh, Neopets, that's what it's called. So she introduced me to this website called Neopets, and I just like, and we went from there. Like we had our own little group, and like that was our like people online. Those were my only friends.
Yeah.
Through middle school, that those were, I went home from middle school and I got right on the computer and started talking to them. And those are my friends. And I mean, even to this day, those people have actually like proven in real life to be like better friends than anyone I ever had in high school. And so she had introduced me to that. I had this little cell phone, and I remember, here's the thing. So I was so innocent, and I didn't have bad intentions. I wasn't, talking about things that were inappropriate on the online chat rooms. I wasn't, you know what I mean? I was just, a little kid having fun.
Sure.
Talking with my friends and talking about how the day went. Yeah. And so I remember I got the phone, and I remember being at school after I got my phone, and I just thought it was so cool to like add all these people into my contacts. So I was going around showing my phone off, and, when I got home, getting online and telling them I had a phone number and to text me and, and to call me. And so I had the phone for about a month. And then I remember coming home, and that night, my mom had a stack of papers. And I was just like, what are you doing? She's like, well, I'm going through the phone bill, and I'm highlighting every number that I don't know, and I'm going to call it to see who you were talking to. And that's when I kind of realized, like, oh, okay, so this isn't something for me to be proud of having. Like, that's when it got kind of weird. And I was like, oh, okay, this is kind of weird. And I didn't like that. And I know her and my dad, I remember they were sitting at the dining room table, and they had this is when when you got your phone bill, it showed every number that you called. Because of the way that, the way the phone bill was charged or whatever. So they had went through the monthly phone bill, and they highlighted every single number that they didn't recognize, and they called it and told them to never contact me again.
Oh my
regardless
God.
of who was ever on the other line, because they're not witnesses, of course. They know that the person on the other end isn't a witness.
That's
so then
that's so
they
wow, that's like a lesson in how to get your child ostracized. I mean, that's horrifying.
Oh yeah, it was definitely a hard day going to school the next day.
Oh, I can only imagine. Wow.
Yeah. So, and I mean, I just thought, I thought I was so cool with the phone, and I was calling all my friends.
Oh,
I was literally calling them just to say hi. Like,
what a complete turnaround. That's horrible.
Yeah. And that's when I kind of realized, like, oh, okay, like this isn't like something that's cool anymore.
Yeah. It's just like a tracking device.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And I mean, they were calling people, and I mean, God forbid a male picks up the phone. I mean, I think that happened maybe once or twice, because I'm calling my friends' home phones, no, not a cell phone.
Sure.
I was cool with the cell phone. So I'm calling my friends' home phones, and maybe their dad picks up or something like that. And they're, my parents are in the living room. If you ever call this number again, we're going to call the police on you for harassment. And we're going to, we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. We're going to track you down, and we're going to call your job. I mean, they're going nuts with the cell phone bill.
That is crazy.
And so that's when I kind of realized, like, okay, I want nothing to do with this cell phone.
Yeah.
Like at all. I wanted nothing to do with it after that.
Yeah, I don't
so
blame you.
It was good for about a month. And then that was kind of the start of where I was like, okay, so like, this isn't, this doesn't feel good.
Yeah, you're starting to see the control. The control, the control aspect is really manifesting in that.
Yeah, and that was kind of the start of it, I think.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, that's right kind of around the time when I hit puberty and all of that. And I think my parents just, and the thing is, I don't know if it's really what they're thinking, but I think it's just as soon as I hit puberty, it was just so in, in their brain that I was just going to become this harlot and this whore. And, and I really feel like the elders and the religion, and I feel like just the religion as itself just kind of teaches parents that, watch those harlots,
Oh, absolutely.
watch those daughters.
Yeah, absolutely. The daughters who are playing
they're gonna be out
Neopets.
here.
Yes. Wow.
So I know that was like the first instance of like real like uncomfortableness and just like a real like sinking feeling.
Yeah.
Getting, from the, in my childhood of kind of like, this isn't okay. Like that's not normal. So when I get to high school, and mind you, they didn't know that, my friend had, my witness friend had brought me on to these, chat rooms and, stuff like that. They thought it was just me doing this all by myself. And so we get to high school. And so my friend that had kind of, put me on to these worldly things such as chat rooms and boys, and she was just really mature for her age. She was talking about having sex and doing things like that, and I was so sheltered. I didn't know what sex was going into high school. My parents refused to let me have the sex ed classes and stuff like that. They would come into our school maybe once a year, and that was not something that I would do. So I didn't know about sex. I didn't really know about boys. I didn't know about kissing. I knew nothing going into high school. And so that's kind of when, meeting all these new people and meeting, I think we were 14 going into high school.
Yeah.
So these kids were already having sex. They were already kissing. They were already going on dates. And I had no idea what any of that was.
Yeah.
So that kind of, shook me up a little bit because I was getting, and I think what happened and what made me realize like nothing of this world was getting questioned. Like have you what did you do this weekend? Oh, we went to the movies and we made out. And I'm just sitting there like I went to field service on Saturday.
Did you make out with anybody?
So
yeah.
I mean, and that's when I kind of realized like I don't know anything about anything.
Yeah. Very few. A lot of us did not know much about anything. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just kind of looking back on it. I mean, my parents gave me, I love them, but they gave me no resources whatsoever to deal with anything in the real world. I didn't know how to ride a bus. I didn't know how to cook a dinner. I didn't know, I knew nothing. I didn't know how to.
You knew how to preach door to door. You knew how to comment at meetings.
Exactly. I knew how to, pressure people and let them know that I was, different and weird by being a witness.
Yeah.
I knew how to do that really good.
Yep.
Yeah, and then in freshman year of high school, I liked boys, and I wanted to be liked. I always kind of dressed kind of weird because my parents, I don't know, they were, I was born in the 90s, so I kind of feel like they were kind of stuck there. So I was, looking like a real, 90s baby in high school. And
hey, there's nothing wrong with the 90s.
I'm sorry.
I said there is nothing wrong with the 90s.
No, there definitely isn't.
I'm just teasing because that's when I was in high school. Makes me feel old.
Yeah, and so I know I wanted to be liked so bad.
Sure.
And high school, I'm coming in and there's like 300 kids or more. I don't know. I think there was maybe 300 to 500 kids on campus. I wanted to be liked. I wanted to hang out, and I wanted to be with my friend. I wanted to go to my friend's house after school and do dumb stuff, and go to the mall and go to the movies. And, high school was just kind of eye-opening because it just kind of made me realize, like, I don't know, I know nothing about how to do anything. My friends we're going to the mall after school, go ahead and just meet us there. Well, how are you guys getting there? Oh, we're taking the bus. I don't know how to take a bus. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do anything. And so freshman year, I know that there was a boy that I had a crush on. And my friend that had introduced me to all these worldly things, she somehow um, knew him too, or something. Because I guess he had started playing football or something, and so she had met him at like a game or something. I don't know. I know her mom let her do a lot of things that my parents would never allow me to do.
Sure.
So she somehow knew him too. So I remember I had liked him, and I had told her that I had liked him. And so she was kind of on this mission to get us to hook up, or something or other, to get us to get together and get me to go around. She was very influential, and she always wanted me to disobey what my parents wanted me to do. And so my other friend so the friend that had introduced me to all these worldly things, she didn't necessarily always go to our hall. She kind of was split in between, so I never always saw her at the meetings. But my other friend, she was, they were in our hall, and I spent a lot of time with her. My witness friends, I was allowed to go to their house and have sleepovers and do all of that. So we were really close. We were always at each other's house. We were always off doing stuff. She was, my best friend, and we went to the same school. We went to the same hall. We did everything together. Her dad, she had her dad. He was a single dad, and she had two siblings. We were really, really close. And so I think we were 14, and we decided we were going to go to the movies. And so my other friend had the bright idea of inviting this boy that I had a crush on. And so I know I had told my best friend at the time, like, is that going to be okay? Like, is it okay if I invite him? Like, we can't tell our parents, obviously this is going to have to be a secret. She goes, yeah, it's fine. Just go ahead. And I think she didn't really want to cramp my style at that time. And so we had invited him, and he came, and me and him ended up kissing. And that was my first kiss in the movie theater.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had left that night. Everything was fine. And then I know the next meeting that we had went to, because we had meetings on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. We went to that Tuesday meeting, and one of the elders that conducted the meeting, it was at his house. So he pulled my mom to the side, and my mom, I just remember my mom, I was in the I was in the garage with my friends and stuff for the when the meeting was wrapped up, and everyone would go off and talk and stuff. And so I just remember my mom coming down the stairs, and she literally grabbed me by my head and dragged me all the way to the car. And she slammed my head up against the car window, and you know what you did, da 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 da, and how could you? You're disgusting. You're a whore. Just all of this just out of nowhere. And so I was just like, I don't even know what's going on at the moment. And she's, get in the car. You're going to go home, because my dad actually didn't go to the meeting that night, because I think we were remodeling our home, and I think he was trying to paint my room that night. So he was going to paint it while we were gone at the meeting. And we got in the car, and I just remember she just kept punching me, just right in the face, just kept punching me and punching me and punching me. You're going to tell your dad what you did. We're going to go home, and you're going to tell your dad how much of a whore you are, and all of this. And so I remember we got home, and I didn't even know what was going on. And I was just like, I don't understand, what did I do? She was like, the movie theater. You invited that boy there, this and that. And that's when I realized my friend had told her dad what we had did.
Wow.
And so
the friend who set you up?
No, I don't think.
Or a different friend?
No. So this was my friend that went to high school with me, and that went to the hall with me. My other friend that had done all, that did all the worldly things, right, and encouraged me to be bad, kind of. She didn't go to the same school as me.
Okay.
And I only saw her on occasion when my parents would drop me off at her house, or whenever we would meet up. But my best friend that I was with most of the time, she went to the same hall, we went to the same school, and I think she felt guilty
Yeah.
for keeping that secret. And I think that's why she told her dad, is that because she didn't want to be a part of doing something bad.
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of guilt around that kind of stuff. And they tell you, if you know that somebody's done a thing and you don't report it, then you're essentially a sharer in their sin. And
Yeah.
that's a lot of pressure on a kid. But what the hell with mom punching you in the face? Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, and I remember because the road, the driveway was gravel, and so she had kind of essentially kind of thrown me down the driveway kind of because she was trying to drag me. And I actually sprained my ankle. I had to go to the doctor and see if it was broken because it hurt so bad because I was wearing heels and she was dragging me through this gravel. Um, yeah, and so that was kind of the first time where I was like, "Oh my God, like I can't trust anybody. Don't trust, that was kind of my first lesson in like do not ever trust anybody
Yeah.
at all. Because I mean, we were best friends. I mean, that was my best friend. Like we were so close, and I had no idea that, she didn't give me a warning. She didn't tell me like, "Hey, I told my dad." It just happened.
Well, yeah. And I mean, it's not only your friend, but I imagine that was a lesson in don't trust mom because mom might just absolutely lose it. Like
Yes.
that's not normal response to something like that.
Yeah, and I mean, we had only kissed. Like
Yeah. Oh my
it was,
goodness.
and I mean, it was so, just looking back on it, like it was so funny to me because the kiss, it wasn't even a kiss, it was like a peck, and I
Of
was just like,
course.
oh my God,
Yeah. Oh
and
yeah.
I was just like, oh my God, he just kissed me, and it wasn't, there was no tongue, there was no making out,
Yeah.
I had no idea what I was doing, no
Sure.
idea.
But that was magic for for a 14-year-old sheltered kid.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was just, she, we had went home and I had told my dad, and my dad, growing up, it became more apparent when I got older, but I think it was a problem that he dealt with for a long time. He was an alcoholic,
Mhm.
and so he would drink. He wouldn't really so much. I never really saw him drinking liquor so much, but I mean, he always had a beer, always. And so we had come home, and he was a very functioning alcoholic. Like he wasn't, one of those, like I get drunk and I pass out. He was, he went through his day-to-day life just fine. Um, and so we got home and my mom had told and I was just so like shook up from what had just happened because my mom had never put her hands on me like that before. And I was I was scared and I was crying. And she, the movie theater, what did you do? And so I was just so shook up. And I know we came into the living room and they made me sit down and they wanted me to act out how we had kissed and like show them what we had did. And I was just like, I felt so like, it was just, I felt disgusting.
Yeah, that's messed
Um,
up.
yeah. And I felt, did he touch you anywhere? And it was just such an uncomfortable conversation. And I was just, mind you, at this time, I didn't know what sex was. I
Yeah.
didn't know about touching people. I didn't know anything like that. So it was just, I felt disgusting talking about it because I was just like, no, like nothing happened. And he didn't touch you here. He didn't touch you there. And I'm just like, no, like, I don't, this is gross. Um, so they wanted me to act out what we had did. And I remember I like, it was so weird. Like I had tried, I guess, to like act it out and it was just so weird. And then, that happened.
Did it
And,
satisfy them? Like, did they believe you?
I honestly, I don't think they did.
Yeah, that's right. Because it
I
sounds
think
like
when
they had
I,
a narrative in their head as far as you're a whore and all these things. It sounds like,
yeah, and I really think
yeah,
that's kind of what their mindset was just, as soon as she hits puberty, she's just gonna be, you know, gallivanting around town, taking in anything that'll come to her.
So was that your
Um,
mom when she was a kid? you know?
Honestly, it kind of was.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It sounds like a whole lot of projecting there.
Yeah, and yeah, my mom. So I have two siblings, and they're my half siblings. So my mom actually had my brother when she was, I think, 15 or 16.
There you go.
So yeah, and then my sister on my dad's side, I don't really know much of her. We weren't really around her, but I know that my mom still to this day kind of projects how she was not only on myself, but, like, with my brother. Um, and I don't know if that's to, make up for lost time or whatever that she had with him. But yeah, so I mean, she had him really young. So I think I think they both just kind of got it in their head as soon as she hits puberty, watch out. And I honestly think the elders in our kingdom hall, and I feel like just the religion itself, like really helped crutch that thought up
Mm-hmm.
in their minds.
Oh, it's a very sex negative, paranoid
Yes.
cult that acts like everyone. I mean, I remember in the congregation I grew up in, brothers and sisters often didn't even go out in service together. Like there was the car full of brothers, there was the car full of sisters, because if a brother and sister worked together out in service, clearly they were gonna do it.
Yeah, they're having sex automatically within the first 30 seconds.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's just how life works, right?
Yeah, that's, you can't, you gotta watch out, for that other sex. You just can't,
Yes.
It's gonna happen.
Yes.
Um,
It creates a lot of really messed up dynamics.
Yeah, and it was, and I mean, it only got worse from there. That was really like the tipping point to where, like shit really got crazy after that.
Oh, really? Wow. So, okay. If you're going to tease that, how did life progress from there?
Yeah, no, it really got crazy after that.
Wow.
I remember going back to school the next day, and I just remember, like, I wanted, like, I just, I hated her for the longest time for telling. And, and I just remember, I know with our hall, kind of the people in the hall kind of just acted like they were better than thou. Than worldly people.
Oh, well,
and
that's
so
Jehovah's Witnesses, but yes.
Yeah, and so I was looked at from her viewpoint, and I'm sure her dad, probably told her, you shouldn't be hanging out with her, and she's a bad influence, and all of that about me, I'm sure, because I was out here kissing boys, and, who, God knows what else, and so, that kind of was the breakdown of our relationship from there. So she, we weren't friends anymore after that. So the only friend that I really had left was my friend that had me doing all this worldly stuff already, in the hall. And I know from there, from my parents' viewpoint, it was her fault. It was my best friend's fault for letting me kiss this boy at the movie theater. And why did she go? And why did she have me go? And so they didn't want me around her either. So that was really, I wasn't allowed to hang out with any more kids from the hall because my parents had just automatically assumed that they were going to lead me into these situations. So my parents kind of unknowingly kind of thrust me into this friendship with the girl who was from the start having me do all these worldly things and things that would have been looked frowned upon. But she looked innocent to my parents because they didn't know. They didn't know that she was, introducing me to chat groups and talking to me about sex and talking to me about kissing boys and, doing all this inappropriate stuff. Mm-hmm. But they kind of thrust me into this friendship with her now. And I was, me and her got closer. So I know I had told her, that I had kissed the boy that I had a crush on, and she knew him too. And so she was just like, I'm gonna get you guys, I'm gonna get you to lose your virginity to him. And so I was, I was just like, no. And so somehow, maybe I think this was by the summer now. So by the summer, she got us to hook up, and I lost my virginity to him. And she, I guess, at some point, I don't know, we were, I think she was a year younger than me. And so I was 14, I think. And she was, at that point, that's when stuff really just got kind of crazy. So,
well, can I ask you something real quick?
Yeah.
Before you get into that, I don't know. I didn't live a normal child life.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get you to lose your virginity to him. Like, to me, that sounds weird. Like, is that something that a normal girl might say to her other girlfriend who's interested in a boy. Is that something like I think what I'm wondering is, was she in some way either acting out through you or trying to justify her own bad behavior by getting someone else to go along too, so that now she didn't feel alone? Like it just feels like a really weird thing to do.
Yeah, and honestly, I think it was just she was just figuring all this stuff out about herself, like she was having sex and she was drinking alcohol, and I think she just wanted someone to participate in that
Yeah, she didn't want to be
with
alone in
her.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean not and it was definitely so I mean the whole situation was just 100% peer pressure
Oh yeah.
because the kids at school, they were having sex
Sure.
and I wasn't. I didn't know any about that. And I remember being teased because I was a virgin. And being teased because I hadn't kissed a boy, and being teased because I haven't done anything, and I haven't smoked weed, or I haven't, drank alcohol, or whatever. I was teased constantly. I was so innocent, and I didn't know anything, and I'm a loser, whatever the situation was. It didn't really bother me at the time, but it was definitely peer pressure coming from her, because I remember she said those exact words, I'm going to get you guys to have sex. And I was just like, no, I don't want to do that. And I remember saying that because I think she had initiated a three-way phone call between me, him, and her. And he was with it. He was like, I'm down.
Yeah.
And I liked him. That's the thing is, and that's really kind of what kind of pushed it to happen, was that I actually liked him. And I had a really big crush on him, and come to find out he didn't really like me at all, but it was, hey, we're gonna have sex. So what young man isn't gonna,
Sure. Yeah.
what 14-year-old boy isn't gonna say, like, okay, let's do that. So he was with that, and she had initiated the peer pressure of getting us together, and I was not interested at all in doing that, and I was like, I don't want to do that. But I liked him, and so in my 14-year-old head, this is gonna get him to like me, and then if he likes me, then and I like him, so I wanted him to like me.
Yeah, that's a lot of...
we had done the deed, and she had, and at that point everything kind of cooled down with my parents from there, from the first kissing incident. And so everything had kind of cooled down, and that had happened. I think that was the summer of freshman year, maybe. And then I guess I remember the following year, I remember because from the high school, so it's about an hour walk from the high school as well, the middle school too, but from the high school to my home. And it's a straight shot. So it's straight down Main Street, all the way down at the very end of the street, almost towards the end of the city limits or the town limits, is my home. So it's about an hour straight shooting walk. And I remember walking, home. I had my cell phone. And I remember her calling me, and she was crying. And I picked up the phone and I said, like, what's going on? She goes, I told my mom everything. And I said, you told your mom everything what? She was like, everything that you did. And I was like, well, what do you mean and I was just like, at that point, I was just like, here we go again. Yeah. Like, oh my God. And I just remember thinking, like, my life is over.
Yeah.
And so I just remember telling her, and I think she was drunk, or she was acting like I don't know. And she goes, I told my mom everything. I'm drunk right now. And I told her, I just told her everything that you and that he did, and this and this and that. And I was just like, are you why? Like, what do I have to do with anything? She goes, I told her it because she caught me doing something. So I told her that you had influenced me to do it.
There you go. I knew that was going to come out. Of course.
Yeah.
She's trying to assuage her own guilt.
Yeah. So she I guess she got caught doing, I don't know if she got caught being drunk or something, but I guess she told her mom, Nicole makes me, she makes me drink, and she makes me, go and have sex, and all of this, other stuff that I had no idea about. And so, it's pretty much kind of put all of the blame on me from there. And then I just remember thinking, like, oh shit, like it's about to get crazy. And so I just, I remember being mad, really mad. And I just remember thinking, like, when my parents find out, like, it's over for me. It's so over for me. and we went to the meeting. I don't know if it was days later or whatever, but we went to the Thursday night meeting, and the elders took my parents, and in a back room, and my mom came out just bawling, crying. And my dad, I don't really remember seeing an expression on his face, but we got home, and deep down I kind of already knew. But I was trying to put on this kind of fake face of like, oh my God, what's wrong?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because I was thinking there's some way I'm going to get out of this. And so I remember my mom just bawling and crying and crying and crying and crying. I just remember being like, it's going to be okay, Mom. Like, what's going on? Are you okay? And she just wouldn't answer me. And she just, we went to bed, and that was it. And
well, in her defense, her defense, it was all about her.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. And
I'm just I'm teasing. Right. I'm just teasing. She just made it all about her. There should, this. Where's the love for the kid, and where's the talking to the kid, and this whole thing has been about her feelings. She gets triggered and upset, and is projecting on you, and she's taking it out on you, and she's making it all about her instead of trying to really help or save you if she really cares.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, that's probably really what it was, is she's thinking, oh, here, my daughter is out having sex at 14, just like I was,
Yeah. What's this look like on me as a mom? Yeah.
Yeah. And so, we all went to bed, and I thought I had escaped the wrath. And I was like, okay, like everything's going to be fine. And so I went to school the next day. Everything was fine. Nothing was different from my parents, and it was really like it was like the eye of the storm. And I went to school, everything was fine, and my mom, I think it was maybe like halfway through the school day, she came and picked me up early. And I had asked the front, the teacher, where I was like, what am I being pulled out for? And she was like, you have a doctor's appointment. And I was like, I don't, but okay. So I got to the car, and I asked my mom, what are we doing? I gotta go to school. She was like, I'm taking you to the doctor. And I was like, for what? She was like, we're going to see if you're still a virgin or not. And that's when I was like, oh, like, oh shit, here we go. And on the way there, I had asked her, I was like, well, why don't you think I am? And she was just like, your friend, and she told us everything.
But why not just ask you? Like,
exactly.
I mean, like no one with ever all the freaking theater and everything, all the drama and the dramatics, taking you to, it's like histrionics, taking you to a doctor and all this. She probably could have just had a conversation with you if she made it safe.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not going to lie. Honestly, I probably would have lied.
Well, sure, of course you would have. Because she didn't make it safe to actually have a good conversation, because she wasn't being a good parent.
Well, yeah. And I mean, honestly, and that's a thing that I, looking back on today, I don't ever want to be the type of parent that just completely avoids the whole sex conversation, because that's how it was with me.
Yes.
And if maybe they would have sat down and really had an honest conversation, I might have not made that choice.
Yeah.
To do that,
of course, yes.
And I mean, I don't know, maybe I would have been more careful and not so quick to jump on the peer pressure wagon if maybe they had instilled some sort of sexual confidence in myself and empowerment in my own, sexuality, and you know what I mean? And I feel,
I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, we had driven to the doctor, and I was just kind of in disbelief. I was like, this is not really happening right now. So we go into the doctor's office, and then, the doctor comes in, and it's actually the nurse. And so this was like where the light switch just kind of flipped for me. And that's when I just really just went off, the deep end, and being a rebellious child after that day. But basically what had happened was the nurse came into the doctor's office, and I'm sitting there on the bed or whatever. I'm still in my clothes and everything, and my mom is sitting in the chair. And she asked me, what we're here for today. And my mom, basically told her we want to see if she's still, a virgin. And so she turned to me and she said, well, Nicole, how long have you been sexually active? And I said, I'm not. Because at that point I was mad.
Yeah.
I was so mad. And I said, I'm not. And she said, oh, sure. She laughed in my face. And she said, oh, yeah, sure. Okay. And then
Okie
she turned
dokie.
to my mom and she goes, how long has she been sexually active? Right in front of me. And I was just like, it was just put off as just this whole, like, I'm bringing in my whore daughter
Yeah.
to, to be looked at because she's just so disgusting. And that's just how my mom kind of talked to me throughout the doctor's visit. And the whole thing was just that she was just so disgusted by me.
And the nurse was a female too, you said?
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know, it just feels kind of I don't know, in, I don't know, maybe feminism. I don't know. Maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but it just seems like what about women taking up for women? Like that's
Yeah.
just like, I mean, not that they should have to, like, you all should have to lie or something, but when women are looking at each other in this way, like that's just so, oh, I don't know. It's just, it doesn't raise the conversation. It does. It's just not healthy.
Yeah. And it
It's
was
just
just,
sad.
yeah, it was really traumatizing
Yeah.
because it was just like, no one believes that,
No.
mind you, like, yes, I went and did something dirty and disgusting with a boy, but like, I'm not a bad child, I'm still a child. I get
And,
good grades. I'm not out here just, you know sleeping with the whole town. Like, I lost my virginity. That's something that a normal teenager goes through at some point
yeah,
in their
which is
in their
why it's
teenage
not
life
dirty and
normally.
disgusting. It's normal.
Yeah,
It's
this is something
normal.
that everybody goes through as
Sure.
in their high school years. Most of the time, it happens with a lot of people. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
I wasn't out here, having children and getting diseases and, or anything, that would be, looked frowned upon by normal society. I was doing what a normal teenager does,
Hmm.
in my opinion,
Yeah,
maybe a little bit early.
but it has to feel, sure, but it also has, it's just such a lonely feeling. I mean, how nice would it have been if that nurse came in and was like, I don't know, took your side, or at least left room open for doubt, as to whether or not you did this, or I don't know. The whole thing's just
Yeah, or I mean,
weird.
even just didn't laugh in my face
Yeah, it's
as a
just
patient.
awful. It's so unprofessional. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, she had finished asking her question, asking what she needed to know from my mom. She didn't talk to me after that. And so she had told me, she put the gown down on the bed and she said, go ahead and get fully undressed and get in your gown, and the doctor will be in a minute. And as soon as she laughed in my face, that was what kind of flipped the switch there. And so my mom was standing right there. My mom was not going to leave. She was going to watch me get undressed and watch me get in the
Hmm.
gown, and she was going to be
Hmm.
there for the whole thing. So she left, and my mom goes, get in the gown. And this was the first time I had ever done this to my mom. I said no. And she wasn't going to beat me in a doctor's office,
Yeah.
And so I said no. And she, was just like, do it now. And I said, no, you're not, like, because mind you, like, I've never been to a doctor for anything serious. And I mean, they left all the instruments out on the table. Like, it was clear what they were going to do to me. And so I was scared. I was like, they're not going to do that to me. Like, you're not going to have someone do that
Yeah.
to an area that's private to me.
Yeah. It's kind of, it's, well, kind of, I don't know. It feels very assaultive.
Yeah. And it was just, I told her no.
Yeah.
And she, and so she started to get mad. And that's when I realized, she's not going to hit me in this doctor's office. She's not going to do that. And so I stood my ground and I said, no, and, you're not going to do this to me, and that's what I said. And so she goes, don't make me call your dad. And I said, call him. And I mean, I've never been that was like the most rebellious thing I've ever done to my parents, because my parents, you didn't tell them no. I remember
Yeah.
my mom had roughed me up for saying duh to her one time. I mean, that's how,
Wow.
once I hit puberty, nothing was off limits. I mean, I was getting, whooped up for anything. Anything that was deemed disrespectful or out of line. And, duh was a word that was not okay, apparently, I don't even know the reason, but that wasn't okay for me to say. So I remember I got, smacked a couple of times for saying that. But just so she had said, don't make me call your dad. And I said, go ahead and call him. You can't force a child to go through a procedure. And I just remember thinking that, like, no one's going to hold me down and force me to have this procedure.
Yeah, it's like your property and not even a person. It's just gross.
Yeah. And I just remember thinking, and then I'm like, what is the worst that they're going to do? And I remember thinking that in my head, because as soon as the nurse laughed at me, I'm sitting there thinking, I'm not going to do this. What is the worst that they're going to do to me if I don't do this?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking in my head, realistically, there's really nothing that they're going to do.
And how old are you now?
I was 14.
Oh, still 14? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so she called my dad, and she had him on speakerphone. I don't think he realized he was on speakerphone. She had him on speakerphone, and she was just like, your daughter is refusing to go through with this. And he said, I kid you not, he started screaming into the phone, and he goes, if she's not going to do this, I'll come down there myself, and I'll fucking hold her legs open myself so that they can check. And I was just like that, and I was just like, wow, that's disgusting.
It's like weird Handmaid's Tale type stuff, like
yeah,
TV
and it's just
show
like,
or whatever. It's just it's awful. It's really one of the more awful things I've heard. And I think what's one of the most awful parts about it is just that they just their view of you and how they, again, it just gets to your property. You're not a person, and it's so dehumanizing, and it's what happens a lot in an authoritarian environment, and it's just awful.
Yeah, and it was just, and I remember hearing that, and then at that point, I was just kind of, at that point, I wasn't scared anymore, and it literally was like a switch, and I was just like, I don't, like, you don't own me.
Yeah.
At that point, that's when I just really made the switch and was just like, I don't care anymore. At that point, I kind of realized, I'm going to do what's best for me. And I don't care how they feel about it in regards to my parents. And this is coming from, I'm 14.
Yeah.
I made the decision, I'm going to do what's best for me, regardless of whatever they feel about it, regardless of whatever the religion feels about it. And at the same time, while this is all going on, I'm sitting here. This is all a direct result of what the elders are telling them to do, what the hall wants them to do, what Jehovah wants them to do. This is all coming from their religious conviction of, whatever they believe. And the things that they believe, this is all coming straight from the religion.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering if they were wanting this doctor to check you out because that would be a second witness. It takes two witnesses to confirm a matter. You have one girl saying that you did this thing, and you're denying it. So they need a second witness. So they get a doctor to say, yeah, she's no longer a virgin. Then they can disfellowship you.
Yeah.
Well, I guess wait. You weren't baptized, so they couldn't disfellowship you, but I guess they could mark you or something like that.
Yeah, they could definitely. I feel like at that point it wouldn't be disfellowshipping, but you can definitely cast that shadow
for sure
upon someone that that they did do something, and we have the proof that they did do it.
And really, condemning 14-year-olds is one of the more important things you can do.
Yeah, all this energy
all this energy to condemn a 14-year-old kid.
Yeah, and just me, a little 14-year-old, having sex for the first time. I'm the worst, worst thing in that hall at the moment.
Absolutely.
And so that happened, and I remember I remember my mom saying, do you hear your dad? And I said, I don't care. I'm not doing it. And that was it. The doctor came in, and I told her I'm not doing it. And the doctor kind of matter-of-factly told my mom, I can't force her to do anything she doesn't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, the end of it. So we went home that night, and, I know my dad walked in the house, and it was just, my parents kind of instilled this kind of like fear of them, just even as a child. And as a child, I had a great childhood, and I wasn't ever scared of my parents or anything like that. But I know I was never to cross them.
Mm-hmm.
I was, that's just not something that you do in our household. And I know my dad came home from work, and he walked past the living room. I was doing homework or something. And I didn't say anything to him. He said hi to me, and I didn't say anything. Because I was just like, how dare you say hi to me?
Yeah.
Like, just 2 hours ago, you were like screaming profanities and saying that you were going to hold me down. Like, I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah.
And I just remember, like, and you know, that switch had been flipped on me. And so I didn't say anything to him. I ignored him. And my mom goes, "You're just going to ignore him and not acknowledge him?" And I ignored her too. And that just kind of like, for them, that it was like a challenge.
Mm-hmm. This is all about power now.
Yes, exactly. It's all about control and what can be controlled and all of that. And so I know that night was actually the first night that I ran away, because my dad, so I didn't say anything to him. He went, you know, and I think at some point, oh, you know what? I think what had happened was when I ignored my mom, she told me to go in my room and to not come out. And, you know, that I was grounded, or, you know, whatever punishment, I guess, that they wanted to do. So they wanted me to go in my room and not come out. So I went in my room, and I remember sitting there, and I remember I had to use the bathroom, which was directly across the hall from my bedroom. And so I had asked my mom, I had peeked out my door and, you know, I kind of used the bathroom. And my dad, coming from the other bedroom, he said, "No, you can't." And I was just like, "Well, I need to use the bathroom. Like, I need to, you know, I need to go." And he was just like, "I don't care. You're not using the bathroom. You can sit in your room." And so I was like, okay. So then I like waited, maybe 20 minutes later, I was like, all right, I really have to go to the bathroom. And he comes to my door, and he, I think at that point he had been drinking. And so he was standing in my doorway, and he goes, "If you cross this line," he didn't threaten me, but he said something about, "I don't care what you have to do, or if you have to go to the bathroom, but you are not to cross this door." He's like, "I don't care if you piss on yourself. I don't care. You're not using the bathroom." And he took a hammer and some nails, and he nailed the bathroom door shut.
Yeah, reasonable.
Yeah. And so
goodness.
I was just like, okay. And so I think I had said something to him, and basically I had kept pushing them and pushing them and pushing them and pushing them throughout the night. And it all kind of brewed up into this moment of my dad. I don't remember exactly what had broken down, but something to the effect of discussing what had happened earlier at the doctor's office. And my dad came into my room and kind of, I think I was yelling at my bedroom door. And he came into my room, and he had a knife, and he put the knife up to my neck, and he backed me all the way up to the wall. And he was just like, "I'll fucking kill you, you know, this and this and this." And then my mom got him to calm down and leave my room. And then they left me alone, and they went to bed. And that had me really shook up. You know, and he was just, you know, "I'll fucking kill you, you fucking whore. You know, you're a fucking, you know, you're this, you're that. You're out here sleeping with anyone that'll sleep with you. And you probably have, you know, HIV, and you're a whore," and just all this, you know, all this stuff. And you know, with the knife up to my throat.
Yeah, that should shake you up. That is about as abusive as it gets. And it's really horrifying that he could still be a brother in good standing at the Kingdom Hall with his alcoholic self, and putting knives up to people, and all the verbal and emotional abuse being thrown at you. I realized they didn't like what you did. I realized that the religion would condemn you for it. But let's not act like everybody here doesn't have some issues going on, you know?
Yeah.
That's pretty heavy.
Yeah. And so that, you know, that night I decided, and I don't know where I realistically thought I was gonna, you know, where this was gonna end up, but I decided to run away.
Yeah, anywhere but here, right? I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I remember I ran away. And I ran away. I got to my friend's house who lived up the street, one of the worldly girls that I had made friends with at high school. And I stayed the night at her house, and then my mom ended up calling her mom the next morning and figuring out where I was at. and brought me back home. And then, from there, it kind of calmed down, really. Nothing really happened after that. I realized at that point that I wanted nothing to do with my parents. And I didn't care what they thought, or, what the religion thought at that point. Of course I was forced to still go to the meetings.
Sure.
But I was kind of, and at that point, our entire kind of family at that point was already looked down upon, because my cousin actually molested quite a few girls in the hall, and it had come out at that point. So our family was already looked down upon.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, when that whole thing happened with him, I think I was, I don't know, maybe 12 or 13 when that all came about. And so when that happened with him, that's, it kind of divided the hall already. And so we were already kind of looked down upon, and now this, of course, coming out about me, and, we're just a whole family of just disgusting people, and, you know what I mean? And just, I was looked down upon, and, no one would talk to me. And I didn't, at that point, when all the stuff happened with me, I didn't care. I was just like, yep, I'm here. I don't care if you talk to me or not. At that point, I thought it was funny, because I didn't care anymore. I didn't care about what my parents thought. I didn't care about what the religion thought. I didn't care about anyone in the religion. I did not care. I was like, I'm at that point, that after that whole hospital thing and the whole thing broke out, I just realized, I'm going to take care of myself, and I'm going to do whatever I need to do. And I don't care what anyone else thinks about it.
Yeah, you have to be done at some point. You hit the breaking point. Did you say that after this, your parents were even, like you said, it all calmed down? Did it even calm down from your parents?
It pretty much kind of went back to normal. I mean, there was a few things that my parents did that they were kind of went off the deep end. I mean, they were still super paranoid about me, doing anything. And I know, one time, I think my dad, I think this is probably the following year. So this was sophomore year. They pretty much assumed that I was just sleeping with everything and everyone. Sure. And so, I mean, they were constantly trying to catch me, doing stuff. But at that point, I had no interest in boys. I was just totally just like, nope. Nope, I'm not going to set myself up. So I didn't want anything to do with boys. I didn't want anything to do with any of that. But I know my dad, for example, sophomore year, I guess they had an assumption that I was sleeping around again, or whatever they were thinking, and bringing boys to the house or something. And so he got off of work early. And, the walk home from my high school. So we started the high school as maybe a group of 30 kids. And we just walk down the main street, and everyone pretty much lives on the main street, on a little side street off of the main street. So we all just, get picked off one by one as we go off to our homes. And my house, I think there was only one girl who lived further than me. So I was pretty much, starting with a group of 30 and then ending with just, me and one other girl. And it was a group of, kids, boys and girls. And so we would all walk as a group together, and then, go to our home. And so my dad, I remember coming home from school one day, and I mean, it was literally, they had timed it. So if I wasn't home within, 45 minutes to an hour of being, the school bell releasing us, they were calling the house, calling me. If I didn't pick up, they were calling the police. They were calling, you know what I mean? Just literally just going to the extreme to make sure I was home. And we actually had a neighbor, and she was a witness as well, our next door neighbor. So they would have her watch the house. I mean, there was really no way to sneak someone in, because we lived on the main street, and everybody knew everybody in that town. So if I was trying to sneak someone in the front door or even the back door, anyone that was driving down that main street, they would see us.
Sure.
And I know they would report back to my parents. If I remember, I had a girl over one time, one of my friends, and my mom had said something to my dad about how one of the brothers in the hall called my mom and told her that at 4:00 or something like that, I was bringing my friend in through the front door. And I mean, that's how on it they were. But anyway, so we would walk home from school, and I know one time, I usually go in the front door and I'd get straight to doing my homework as soon as I got home. So I'm sitting there doing my homework, I'm watching TV or something too, and my dad just busts in the front door at like 4:30, which is odd because he usually doesn't get home until 6. And he just busts in the front door, and it scared me, and I turned around and I was like, "What are you doing?" And he was just like, "Oh, nothing." And I was just like, "You're home like really early." He was like, "Yeah, I had something to do." I was just like, "Okay." And it was just really weird. And then later on that night, my parents, they asked me, "Is there anything that you want to tell us?" And I was just like, "No." I went to school, I walked home, did my homework, did everything like I'm supposed to. And they said, "Well, are you sure there's nothing you want to tell us?" And I was just like, "No, like there's literally nothing I want to tell you guys." And they go, "Okay, well, come into the back office with us." So I go into the back office. My dad has his computer up. He had the double screen at the time because he was an architect. And so he did a lot of like CAD drawings and stuff like that on his computer. So he had the double screen. And I walk into their room, and they have just hundreds of pictures on the computer. And they go, why don't you look at this and then tell us if you want to tell us something?" So I look closer, and the pictures are just hundreds upon like 500 just pictures, scrolling through them all, of me and my group of friends walking home from school. And then I piece it together and realize that my dad had gotten off work early and stalked our group of kids home and took pictures of us while we were walking.
That is creepy.
Yeah. And so they were, and I mean, it was maybe, I don't know, it's probably like evenly split, maybe half boys, half girls. So they were asking me, "Who is this boy? Who is this boy? Who is this boy?" We want his phone number. We want his address. We want to know who he is, who his parents are. We want everything I didn't know all those boys. Like, how am I supposed to know who this boy is that just happens to walk the same way that I walk home?
Well, it's to know them. It's a group
of like literally 30 children. Yeah. Like you really.
Well, so get to know them and get all their numbers and their addresses.
Yeah, basically. And so they, who is this boy? Who is this boy? Who is this boy?
Stupid.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's not like they had pictures of you coming home with the boy.
Yeah, exactly.
So what?
And
the
so
heck?
They were, who is this boy? Are you sleeping with him at his house? And da 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 da. And I'm just like, this is ridiculous. Like this has to be illegal. This has to be illegal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I mean, that was just like one instance of my dad doing something crazy, and and I mean there's probably tons of other examples that I couldn't remember or whatever, but all in all, I know I finished out sophomore year, and then I made it halfway through junior year, and I couldn't focus on school anymore just because home life had gotten so bad, just to the point of, I'm just constantly, my dad is constantly drunk, and we're constantly, you know what I mean? It's just, at that point I was, I was a whore, and I was, just a disgusting person, and, and so all of that was going on, and it was just so bad living at home. And
so did you just quit school, or?
Yeah. So I basically, my parents pulled me out of junior year because by the time we had made it to the halfway year mark, I was failing in everything. So they had pulled me out and put me through homeschooling.
Mm-hmm.
I quadrupled up on my classes, and I finished out junior year with a high school diploma.
Nice.
Yeah. So at that point, I had basically come to them at that point. I think I was 16. Yeah, I had just turned 16. Or you know what? I didn't even turn 16 yet. I was 15. And I had actually recently gotten in contact with my brother because growing up, I didn't know my siblings because they were worldly. So, growing up, I didn't know my brother. I was kept far away from my brother. Anytime that he was visiting, I had to go into a second room and not see him. So
what? Your parents kept you physically away from him in the same house?
Yeah. So like he would come. So my brother's quite older than I am. So my brother was 17 when I was born. And so kind of just a short history on him, basically, my mom had him when she was, 15 or 16.
Yeah.
She, I don't know, I don't know who his dad is. She met my dad when my brother was maybe 9, and him and my dad did not get along. So she shipped him off to someone in like Wisconsin, or I don't even know the state.
Oh man, that says a whole lot right there. That explains
Yeah.
a whole lot of your relationship with her.
Yeah. So she shipped him off, and I didn't even know him growing up. I know when he was a little bit older, he started coming back around, and he would visit, and I know he would come, they would send me into my parents' room, and we had a Nintendo 64, and they would put me on that while he would visit and close the door to make sure that there was no contacts. And I remember maybe like once or twice him coming back in the back room and just being like, "Hey, I love you. Like, it's nice to see you." And
Wow.
that pretty much being it.
That's so weird.
Yeah. And then, I mean, pretty much the same with my sister. My sister is from my dad's side, and he had her, before. I think she's 10 years older than I am. So he had her with another woman, and then they met my mom, and I was, pretty much the golden child. My brother and my sister were pretty much forgot about once I was born.
Yeah, because you had a chance at becoming one of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Exactly.
So then
exactly. There
once
was no
it was
interference.
clear, yeah.
There was no, other parent that they had to, deal with getting me into the religion. It was just a straight shot.
And then once they realized that you weren't going to follow that path, they were just done with you.
Yeah, I was just
garbage.
Exactly, just trash that they had to deal with until I was of legal age.
So how do things progress? Where, I mean, like you're 15, 16, you're graduating high school. How do you? I assume you're not allowed to get a driver's license. They don't seem like the kind of were you able to? I mean,
yeah, they actually they took me to get my permit.
Oh, that seems weird to me, because it doesn't seem like they would want you having freedom.
Yeah, well, no, I had the permit, but I didn't have a car. So
okay, I got you.
Yeah, they wanted me to get that resolved, but they didn't. There was no car access for sure.
Did you work?
I know I had gotten my permit, and I think I was 15 and a half, because if you take, I think in California, it's something about if you take classes or something for a certain amount of hours and a little bit of driving, you can get your permit before you're supposed. I don't know how it works,
sure,
but
yeah.
I got my permit, and I had like a, restricted permit, which was fine. And, like my parents would let me drive their car around with them in it, of course. Or if, and it's so weird because and it kind of ties into the whole thing that happened with my cousin, because what happened with my cousin is the things that he did within the hall were like really flat out disgusting, but they allowed me to hang out with him as much as I wanted all the time. Even after everything had broken out about what had happened with him and what he had done. But because he was a witness, it was better for me to be around him than to be around, a worldly friend.
Wow.
Which was kind of weird, which, looking back on it, and I mean, this is just something that I've come to realize, in the past couple of months here, is like, wow, like knowing, and I mean, what had happened with him was just kind of, in short, he, was molesting children in our hall. And he admitted it. And he never went to jail. He simply just didn't come back to our hall. He had to go to another hall. And I mean, this was, several girls that were, little kids, and, he had never done anything to me, or, we had never had that type of interaction. And I don't know, why, but it's kind of scary to me that as a parent, you know what I mean? You would allow me as a young girl, because he was, quite a bit older than me, maybe 5-6 years older than me. As a young girl, you would still allow me to be around him and pass it off with the excuse of, oh, well, she'll tell us if he does anything to her.
Oh, God. This is why this stuff keeps happening in their cult, because they don't take it seriously. And they think as long as you're a brother or sister, you're okay. Even if you have something like this in your past, they don't get it and they don't care.
Yeah. And I know, and it's just like, it's crazy to think about, because I know right after everything came out about what he had done, I know I wasn't allowed to hang out with him for a little bit. And I know, and I was maybe like 12 or 13 when this happened. And I do remember being asked if he had done anything to me. And I remember saying no. And we couldn't hang out for maybe like a year or two. I don't know, maybe like 6 months to a year. And then everything went back to normal. I mean, we hung out all the time. We were alone hundreds of times.
Well, Nicole, look, we have to forgive people. Not you, not you, but other people.
Yeah. And it's just, it was crazy, because it was just like, and looking back on it now, and that's scary.
Oh, I understand. I was left in the care of people who apparently had checkered pasts as well, or even checkered presence. How in the world I escaped being abused in that way, I don't know. But yeah, I get it, because then you find that stuff out later and you're like whether or not you knew some of these people had been abusive in the past, how in the world was it okay to leave me with these people?
Yeah. And and another thing that I thought about too was, why am I such this huge whore?
Yes.
But I'm allowed to be with an admitted child molester.
Well, part of that's because you're a girl.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's, in any patriarchal organization, the girls are going to be seen different than the boys, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely, yeah. They totally looked upon brothers that did things differently than sisters.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just, that's just so, I just can't, I don't know, I just, as a parent now, like, I cannot imagine just saying, because I mean, we did everything together, me and him, with his friends, and, he still had the same friends as in the hall as before. They all knew, everybody knew what he had done. He still had the same friends, a year later, after when we were finally able to hang out again. And I mean, he had his own little like apartment above his parents' garage. So I was allowed to drive over there any time that I want. And mind you, this is, my aunt and uncle and my cousin. So we're family. So I was allowed to drive over there with my parents' car whenever I wanted, hung out whenever we wanted, and I mean, we were super close. And I feel kind of like, it kind of even, and at the time, knowing, I was maybe 14, 15 when we were hanging out so much, and I knew what he had done, but it was never presented to me as like, looking back on it now as an adult, like how, why didn't anyone, like, and I mean, I get it. Like, maybe I was, I was so naive and I was still a child. So I was thinking hanging out with him, as, he didn't do it to me. So it's fine.
Well, sure. And you just wanted a friend. You wanted somebody to hang out with.
And he was a witness, so that was,
kids don't
and he
understand.
was my family, so I could hang out with him.
Yeah, adults should understand. Kids don't understand.
Yeah, and so now looking back on it now, it's just like, as a parent now, like, I could never, I don't care how close a family we are, I don't care if we're both witnesses, I don't care what religion we share. If you have admitted to doing, to abusing children, and then I turn around and say to my kids, hey, go ahead and go hang out for 6 hours alone in his apartment. Just let me know if he does anything. Like, what? No.
That's neglect.
No, you're doing parenting wrong at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. You get an F.
Yeah, like, no, that isn't, no. And I remember asking my mom about this. I think I asked her about this maybe 2 summers ago. And I asked my mom and I said, why did you guys let me hang out with him after all of this? And I just remember her saying, we trusted you to tell us if he did anything.
Yeah, we trusted you after the fact. We threw you into the lion's den, and we figured once the lion takes a bite out of you, you'll probably tell somebody.
Yeah, and I remember saying to her that day, and I was just like, you do realize, like, the main tactic for an abuser to use is to threaten you to not tell your parents.
Yes.
Like, do you really believed a 14, 15-year-old girl that could have possibly, I mean, God, like, what if I was, you know what I mean? I guarantee you he would have said something to the effect of, we're going to get arrested if you tell anyone, or your parents are going to disown, you know what I mean? He could have thrown
I'll kill
whatever
somebody
excuse
you like,
he wanted.
or, yeah, of course.
But yeah, so, and I remember, being, after I got my diploma, I remember telling, my parents at that point, because I mean, it was pretty clear. I mean, I had, they had kicked me out a couple of times. I had ran away a couple of times at that point. Life at home was just hell at being at home. Just the way that they had talked to me, treated me. I was forced to go to the meetings, of course. At that point, I had no interest whatsoever. Just because after, all of the things that had happened with my cousin, even before the whole thing, the whole stuff happened with me, we were pretty much kind of shunned ourselves a little bit in the hall after what he had done, because we were his family.
Yep.
So we were pretty much seen as just automatically, like kind of complicit with what he was doing.
Mm-hmm. That's how they view things. It's like the sins of the father.
I mean, it was literally, it was literally divided in the hall between, the victims' families and their supporters, and then, our side, which was our family and the few people who were on our side.
So how do you get out of this? What is your exit strategy as a kid? Because it's 16, even 17, whatever, you're still a kid. How do you get out of this? How does this progress where you leave the situation?
Yeah. So when I got my diploma, I had actually, for, maybe a month or two, I had started my brother started reaching out to me. Mm-hmm. And we started talking, via phone, via text and stuff like that. And so we had actually started getting close because, and I think my brother, I don't know if maybe my mom had kind of told him some of the things that had happened, but I think he kind of knew, what mom and dad did to me when I was 9, they're doing it to you now. And so I think he kind of knew what they were doing. And so he started reaching out to me more, and he had just, let me know, I know we don't really know each other, but you are always welcome to come live with me. And he lived in Washington. So I got my diploma, and at that point I had actually been working. So we had a little grocery store right next door to our house, and I had been working there, and I had actually managed to save up a couple of $1,000s from working, because I worked full time, because once I was homeschooling, I had nothing to do throughout my day.
Oh, absolutely.
So yeah, so I went and worked for that little grocery store, and I was making, minimum wage or whatever, and I was working 40 hours a week plus some overtime. And so I was working full time, and I saved up all my money. I didn't have any bills or anything like that, so I saved up all my money. And I remember I got my diploma, and I told my parents, either you're going to allow me to emancipate myself, or I'm going to go live with my brother. And, I remember telling them, if you don't allow me to do either or, because I was only, 16 at the time, I'll have no contact with you, and I'll have no problem doing that. And I just told them matter of factly like that. Mm-hmm. Either I'm going to emancipate myself, and you're gonna sign off on it, because I believe at the time, I think in California, the guardians of the child have to sign off on the emancipation, because I had done my research, so I knew exactly kind of what I was getting myself into. And so I just told them, matter of factly, I'm going to emancipate myself, or you're going to allow me to live with my brother, and you'll have, occasional contact if you allow me to live with my brother. And so they allowed me to go move in with my brother, and nice. I left, and I moved to Washington.
Good for your brother you haven't told me how this all goes, but I hope it was good. It's okay to say good for your brother for allowing you to do this.
Yeah. And I mean, looking back on it now, I mean, honestly, I feel like in the, few years that, from, I don't know, maybe it's been like 10 years now. In the 10 years that, my brother has been there for me, he's been more of a father and taught me more kind of life, applying, things, and taught me how to be, a grown up and how to live in the real world. And he taught me how to ride a bus and how to cook dinner and, and do things that matter, and how to, do things, and how to get around and how to be safe and how to, always be aware of your surroundings, and just taught me a lot of real world things that I apply now as an adult.
Good for him.
That I would have never gotten.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I moved in with him right after I turned 16. And I mean, he, that was pretty much it. It was him and his wife and his kids at the time. And so we, were like a family. And that was pretty much it. And, I didn't really have much contact. I in the beginning, I really didn't want anything to do with my parents. So I didn't talk to them for probably like a year. They would talk to my brother and my brother's wife about, myself and how I was doing and stuff. And I know that my brother's wife had always, said, like, hey, you like your mom wants to talk to you. And I would just refuse. And I didn't want anything to do with them for a really long time. And then, it was kind of off and on. So I lived at my brother's house for maybe like a year the first time around. And then, I don't know if it's just me or, just the family dynamic. We weren't really getting along. And it wasn't anything serious. It was just like little bickering stuff, And so at that point, kind of just from what I had learned growing up, is that when there is a problem, you run away. And so, I left and I moved back at home with my parents. And my parents kind of always did this, when we were on speaking terms, oh, just come back, come live with us. We promise it won't be like how it was, and we'll be better, and we won't treat you like how we treated you. And we promise we won't, we just want to be a family. We miss you so much. And just really kind of sugared me up into thinking that we would be a normal family. And so, at my brother's house, we just weren't really getting along. And so I just remember moving back to California because I, kind of fell back into my parents', trap of this normal family.
And how old were you?
I moved back in with my parents, and they helped me get a car, and I started working, and it was great for like the first month or so. And then it was back into, you're going to go to the meetings, you're going to do this, we're going to, they put a tracker in my car, and I was just like, okay, yeah, we're not doing this again. So then I would move back up to Washington, and I did that maybe 3 times, of just kind of doing the back and forth. And, I would move back, my parents would start doing the crazy stuff again, and I would go back up to live with my brother, and then me and, my brother's wife wouldn't get along that time. So then I would come back to California because my parents would promise me that it would be different. And then they would do, and it was just a cycle for maybe, 3 or 4 times. And then I finally ended up sticking in Washington because I had met my child's father, and we had gotten together, and then I had become pregnant. So then from that point there, I stayed in Washington.
And is that where you are today?
No. So okay, I'm actually back in California.
Okay. Gotcha. That's what I thought, but I was like, oh, maybe I misremembered what you had said.
No. So me and my child's father, we were together for about 5 years. We had 2 sons, and it just ended up not working out in Washington. So, and it's kind of funny because right about maybe 6 months into my pregnancy with my first son, my brother had decided that he was going to move back down to California. So he kind of left to come to California, and I didn't have anyone other than him up there. So it was really just me and my child's father and his family. So my brother moved back down to California, where we're originally from. And it was just me and my children's father. We stayed together for, 5 years after that. We had another son, and it just ended up not working out. And I didn't have anywhere to go. Once it didn't work out. So I moved back to California. I lived with my parents for maybe almost a year, I think. I lived with my parents for almost a year, and then I moved back to the hometown where we're from, and that's where I'm at. That's where I am now.
And that's the same town where your parents live, correct?
No. So we're from Sacramento.
Okay.
And we lived in a small town about 3 hours from Sacramento.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So not too far then.
Yeah, it's not too far. It's about 2.5 hours from here.
So what is your relationship now with any of those people from your past? You know, with your former best friend, with any of those witnesses, with your family, you know, kind of what is the relationship now?
I know from the Kingdom Hall that we went to, I can't say I'm friends with anyone from there. I follow a couple of people on Instagram, and they follow me back, and we like each other's pictures, and and honestly, looking into it from what I've seen, almost 90% of the kids that I grew up with, none of them are witnesses.
Yeah, at same here. Point. Most left, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, my dad actually was in the hospital. I think this was maybe like 6 months ago or something. And my best friend, the one that went to the movie theaters with us, her little sister is a nurse at the hospital that he was at. He goes, yeah, I saw her, and I said hi to her and asked her how she was doing. And it was just, it's a small world, so it's no bad feelings or anything like that. And there's from the Kingdom Hall, I don't really talk to anyone. I know my dad's side of the family. Some of them are still, witnesses, and some of my cousins are still, fully into, the faith and all of that. But I know I don't really think there's anyone from the town that I grew up in that I'm actually, that I talk to.
If you tried to talk to them, I was just wondering if you tried to talk to any of them, would they shun you, or would they be willing to talk to you?
I don't believe they would. I think I know. I haven't reached out to them, but I know. I think if I know we've said just like common like civil like hi and bye talk before, like, hey, how are you doing? Good, okay, great, that's good to see you're doing good, and how are the boys, and oh, they're good, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. As long as you're not baptized, there's only so much they can, they don't really shun quite as, I mean, some people shun, that's their choice as far as somebody who's not baptized, but yeah, I was just wondering how they reacted to you.
Yeah, I know with with the people that are somewhat close to me, and that's the thing with my parents is I haven't actively talked down on their beliefs.
Right.
I haven't actually like had a conversation with anyone that I know that's a witness to this day about why I don't agree with it or what I don't like about it. We haven't had that conversation. I know my dad had said something a couple of weeks ago, and had asked me if I was going to get my sons into Bible study. And I was just, and I think with my parents, once I had my first son, that's when they just totally just let everything go. They didn't try to force anything on me. I think that's when they finally realized, like, she's, let her go. And it really just like was a turning point kind of for them in the way that they act towards me. When I came back to live with them, when me and my kid's dad didn't work out, when I came back to live with them, I mean, there was no pressure to go to the meetings. We didn't even talk about it.
Really? They didn't even put pressure on I mean, I don't know how old the child was at the time, but they didn't put pressure on the kids?
No.
Wow. Because usually if they can get a child alone in a corner, they're going to start preaching.
Yeah. And I know, I think when I came back, I think they maybe took my older son to one meeting, maybe. And that was it. They don't pressure us. They don't talk to me about it. They don't try to bring it up. And I think when I had my first son, I think that's when they kind of realized, like, you know, she can't be controlled by us anymore.
Yeah.
And you know, I was 19 when I had my first son, so you know, I think that's when they kind of realized, you know, all right, I mean, she's, you know, becoming a, you know, a mother now, and she has her own life now, and there's nothing really much about that we can control. So I think that's kind of where they just kind of let off.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, what about you? As far as you talked about, I'm not asking you what your current belief system is. That doesn't really matter. But just you talked about, you know, how you haven't really talked down about the beliefs or talked about how you view it. How has your path of awakening been as far as actually looking into the belief system that you were exposed to and some of the things behind the scenes that Jehovah's Witnesses are doing? Kind of what have you been looking into there, or has anything helped you along this path?
Yeah, you know, I kind of, you know, when I was living in Washington, and when I really left, which was, I mean, for me, I would say I really left the religion at 16.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, at you know, any time before that, I was forced to go to the meetings, and I was, you know, I had to go. But once I lived with my brother, there was no, you know, no meetings, none of that. Just completely worldly living. And so I mean, kind of just, I remember up until this year, it was really just something that I was kind of ashamed of, to be a part of, because I
Right.
know, you know, just like the, you know, I learned about the child abuse stuff just this year. And I know anything before that was just kind of like Jehovah's Witnesses are kind of weird.
Right.
And, you know, I have all these crazy stories to tell about my upbringing and the crazy stuff that my parents did. And, you know, and so I would tell people that, just, you know, like just little bits and pieces. And they would just be like, you know, that's crazy. That's so crazy that they did that. And that's so crazy that that happened. And that's so crazy. And I just remember, you know, just kind of telling it as just kind of like a, you know, like a crazy story to tell, and not really anything further than that. And just kind of something to be, I wouldn't say ashamed of, but just like, you know, like, I'm not really going to talk about it unless someone asks me.
Right.
But just kind of more recently, just kind of thinking, you know, kind of looking back on things and realizing like that, you know, just kind of coming into my own as a parent, and the things that my parents did and the way that I was raised. It's not, I'm starting to kind of realize now it's not just a crazy story. Like, you know, that's wrong. You know, a lot of the stuff that happened to me was wrong, and that's not okay. And, you know, I had looked in, I was looking up, like, I don't know what to call it, but, like, you know, groups for
Mm-hmm.
people who were ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, because I was curious. I was thinking, you know, I have all these crazy stories, like, and I know what the witnesses believe. Like, there has to be other people out there that have had some sort of crazy story. And so
Absolutely.
I started doing research, and I came across, you know, the Reddit forum.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the first day that I discovered the Reddit forum, I mean, I literally just sat there like all day for like 8 hours and just read through, you know, everything. And I was just like, this is so crazy. Like, these
Yeah.
are all so similar. All these stories are so similar.
Yeah, and then you start seeing what's behind the beliefs and the people at the top, and there's so many things that go on, and it's just awful.
Yeah. And just how it, you know, and all of the, you know, and learning more about the governing body, and, you know, how distorted, you know, reality is viewed,
Yes.
within the religion, and within the cults. And, you know, and just something. So I think it was maybe a month ago, or a month or two ago, that I really started looking into this. So it was maybe, I don't know, maybe like March or February or March, that I really just started kind of looking into this. And then I came across the news articles about, you know, the child abuse, and, you know, people winning, you know, settlements, and things of that nature. And I was just like, you know, kind of thinking, you know, that's something that hits home,
Yeah,
because that happened in my hall.
absolutely.
And it just, I started to think about it more and more. And I'm just, you know, started realizing, you know, like, when that all broke down, you know, he never went to jail. He went to
Mm-hmm.
another hall.
Mm-hmm.
And I thinking about it now as an adult, it's just like they just dropped him into another hall, probably full of young children.
They just moved the problem.
Exactly. And so it just, that just kind of opened up my thinking, because before this year, I just really haven't thought about it. It's just kind of, that's just something that happened to me in my past. And that's, it's just something that's a part of my past, and I got stories to tell. But looking more deeper into it, it's just, it's scary and it's disturbing. And something that my dad said to me a couple of months ago, or maybe it was a month ago or something. We haven't been down there in a while, but we were visiting him, and he had asked if I had put my sons into Bible study, or if I was interested in doing that. And I just said no. And I said, if they're interested in learning about God, and that's something that they want to do, I'm going to facilitate that on their terms.
Yeah.
And so it kind of all culminated to that question, because one of my cousins actually just committed suicide this year, and he was a witness. And so we were talking about it, and I had gone down to visit my parents, and I had asked him, because this isn't, and I actually heard about suicide in the organization as something that's actually pretty common.
Yeah, it happens.
And so I remember talking to my dad about it, and my other cousin, one of my other cousins who's actually in the religion as well, she killed herself a couple of years ago as well. And that was a thing, and we all got together when that happens. And then just recently, my other cousin committed suicide just this year, which was like maybe a month or two ago. And I asked my dad, have you thought, because it's all on his side of the family that this is happening in. And so I asked him, just with how crazy, my dad has been in the past. And I asked him, I said, do you think mental illness runs in your family? And it was so ironic, his answer. He said, and I kid you not, those were his exact words. He said, I think it's the way that they were raised.
Oh, gosh.
And I said, and I thought about it, and I was just like, that is so funny that he, would think of it that way. And,
your dad's an alcoholic. What is he running from?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things going on here where people are masking some really bad behaviors and some bad things that have happened, and they're acting out in ways that don't speak to healthy mental states or emotional states. It's just the cousin who molested kids. What side of the family was he on?
On my dad's side.
Well, it just I don't know. I can't say that stuff doesn't happen in a vacuum, but a lot of times kids that do that because someone has done it to them, and it's a cycle. And so you have to wonder, what might be something that goes on in that side of the family, where there are so many suicides and people are drinking and things like that. It's just a real sad, it's a sad possibility that there might be a lot of pain there that's being transferred to other people or covered up. And I hate that, because it's just nobody wins. Everybody ends up hurting, and then hurting other people.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, and honestly, for me, I think, the first step in changing that is accepting that, accepting that you might have went through something, and accepting that it hurts, and accepting that, things might have happened to you. But, for the most part, I mean, my entire side of my dad's family, they're all witnesses, and they don't do acceptance, and
no,
they don't delve into, the pain, and they don't delve into trying to figure out what's going to fix it. They just cover it up with but trust in Jehovah. Jehovah's going to fix it.
They just escape into belief.
Armageddon.
Yeah, they escape into belief, and those beliefs then become the mask that they wear to cover over the ugly things that lie underneath. And it's just a shame, because if they actually got real help, they might have a chance at happier lives. Of course, they buy into a concept that is going to give them an eternal happy life where the former things won't be called to mind, where they don't have to think about or deal with their past or the pain that they have underneath. And, that's a fictitious hope that they've been given. So it's just sad, because in looking to that, they're not dealing with things that could actually bring them happiness in the only life that they know that they actually have.
And it's just, and, I don't know. I know with my parents, it's just, for me, it's so clear, you have this life that you're living, and you have the opportunity to heal yourself. Yep. and fix things and do better and become better and instill better in your children. But instead of doing the work right now, you just, it'll be fixed at Armageddon.
Yep.
Why don't you do that work right now?
Because it's easier to put it off on God.
Exactly. It's easier to just say, in paradise, we won't feel that anymore.
Right. Well, let's talk about, so we're talking about new lives here, or how people could change their life if they chose to. What about you? So you've got a new life, and you've got your own children. What dreams do you have for your own life? What do you want for yourself? What do you want for your kids? What are you trying to make happen now?
I think for me now, it's just, enjoying, the freedom of life, really. You can do anything you want to if you put your mind to it. And for me, it's really just enjoying every single day and not worrying about the little things, and not, worrying. For me, I don't necessarily have a belief now. I can't say that I necessarily believe in God. Just for me, it's just, living my life now is just, loving everything, and, loving the people around you, regardless of who they are or what they believe, or, anything. And for my kids, I just really want to instill that in them, that, you don't have to agree with everyone. It's totally fine to not believe the same thing that the next person believes in any aspect, whether it's religious or not. You're here now, and it's your job as a human to enjoy everything as much as you can. And that's really kind of what, we pretty much live by, at this moment, is just, enjoying everything that we can while we can, and having fun and not having regrets, and learning as we go, and making mistakes, and, just kind of trying to live life as and enjoy how beautiful the grass is, and how beautiful these trees are, and go, we kind of have a mission this summer to go as many places as we can. So, we've already started on that. We've been to the snow this year, and we've been to the beach, and we've been everywhere in between so far. So we're just going to keep going and just enjoy every bit of time that we have together.
Yeah, that's, Jehovah's Witnesses are growing up. We looked toward a future paradise where we were going to be able to travel, and everyone that you saw was going to be your brother or your sister, and you could love those people, and we were going to have fun. We were going to appreciate what we at the time thought deemed as creation around us, the grass and all that. And so basically what you're saying is that you're loving the people around you now, and you're appreciating the grass, and you're traveling. Like, we don't have to put these things off to some promised future. We can have those things today, and they are real.
and we can count on those things, and we can really make a difference instead of farming our life out to fairy tales that we've been taught, or to an organization. It's so beautiful that you are able now to enjoy these things in the now, and to give those things to your kids. I think one of my personal favorite things about being on the outside now, we don't have any kids, but I love seeing people that were in, whether it's Jehovah's Witnesses or Amish or FLDS or just any of these groups, whatever, who were in these high control groups. I love seeing them get out and with their kids being able to give their kids something they didn't have. And, unconditional love and just an appreciation for the life and the world around them. And so I'm really glad to hear that you're able to give that to your kids now. I think that's just like the best thing.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I feel like that's just so important, and it's more than, just, and that's the first thing that I hear is, oh, you're going to let your kids celebrate holidays and stuff. And then I'm just like, it has not, it's more than that. It's so much more than that. Yes. Just watching them, and with my oldest son, mostly because he's coming up on 9 now. So he's becoming aware of himself and aware of things, more aware of what's going on around him. So it's so interesting and even fulfilling for me to just kind of watch him become his own identity and who he wants to be, and watching him become comfortable in what he believes. And, and it's so funny because, like one day he'll say, Mom, I think I believe in God. And I'll say, okay, then do you, just, you let me know if you want to learn more and where you want to learn it from. And, we can go do research and, and then the next day he'll say, I don't think I believe in God anymore. And just knowing, for myself, I want to give him the opportunity to research and have his own opinion. And most importantly, like, ask questions. No matter what, doubt everything, doubt everything, ask questions, be open-minded and, it's okay to believe something one day and then not believe in it the next day. And, it's something that you have to, learn as you go about yourself, just everything. So, it's really interesting, and it's like, it's really fulfilling to me to kind of see him grow and every day learn something new about himself and about his surroundings, and just kind of watching him adapt and kind of change. So,
yeah, that's beautiful. You're loving your son for who he is rather than trying to make him a spitting image of you in order to love him. And I think that's the difference between real unconditional love and kind of narcissistic controlling love. That you're trying to see him for who he is, not trying to make him just another version of you. And I love that you're doing that. I love that you have things to look forward to, and that you're teaching your kids these things, and creating the life that you really want, and not settling for the one that others tried to kind of cram you into. Was there anything that I didn't ask that you would like to touch on, or do you feel like that kind of encompasses your story?
No, I think that pretty much encompasses it. I know, just kind of for reference, I don't know if you want to add this in there as well, but I know kind of my relationship with my parents today is kind of I don't know. I mean, it's not like we're super close, but I know we communicate, and they're really close with my kids. And just something I wanted to add in as well was, I know with my dad, so when he had asked about the Bible study for the boys, he actually had, we were talking about the suicide with my cousin, and he had brought up, I had asked him, I said, who's all going to go to, the funeral or the memorial for him. And he had said, probably his parents and my cousin's parents actually are split up, and his dad is a non-believer, and his mom, which is my dad's sister, is a believer. And my dad just went on this, just started going on this rant about how my cousin's father is just a disgusting human being because he's an apostate.
Oh, yeah.
And he openly speaks badly about the religion, and he doesn't agree with it, and just how disgusting of a person. I mean, he just got, just livid just thinking about it. And I'm just sitting there, this whole time, and I'm just like, yeah, that's kind of me too.
Raise his
and
hand.
So, it was just kind of funny to me because he just got so vibrant and livid about how disgusting of a person this guy is, because he's an apostate, and how he doesn't believe in Jehovah, and that he openly talks bad about the religion, and just how how nasty and how bad of a person he is because he's an apostate. And I was just just sitting there kind of like, well, this is gonna be me in a few weeks when I talk with Michael. So
welcome to the club. Welcome to the Filthy Apostate Club. I'm gonna have shirts made.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I wanted to kind of put that in there as well, because even though I'm not necessarily being shunned now, it kind of makes me wonder, if my parents, were to know, it kind of made me think, like maybe my parents are a little bit naive about thinking that I'm not against their religion. I mean, I don't know. I think I've made it pretty clear that I'm not necessarily ever interested in becoming a witness again. But I think they might have a little bit of a, misconception there with my dad asking me about the Bible study for my kids. And
hope springs eternal.
Yeah. And, they might have a little bit of a misconception there that someday I might, and I know that they kind of preach about that in the meetings too, that, you can always hope that, they'll come back, they might come back to religion and all of this.
Well, that's one of the reasons a lot of times they're nice to you. And I'm not saying in this particular instance, but just a lot of times when if a person doesn't have to be shunned, for their rules, they can still be nice to you. And one of the reasons that they are is because they're hoping that ultimately you'll come back. And it's just a sad reality that even then, sometimes they're still not seeing you for who you are. They're still trying to see you for who they think you could be if you became one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And it's just sad because it really discounts the value of the individual. And
yeah. And that's something that I've thought about recently too, is, if and when they do hear this, I wonder, if their closeness with me will change. I know since we've had that discussion, since me and them have talked about the Bible study thing, I know that we've only talked twice since then. And it was really super brief, which is unusual, because usually they call me frequently to talk to, my kids, and it's more so my mom. And I think, honestly, looking back on it, I think my mom is kind of more, and I know I've seen the terms, looking back on it over the years, I think she's been pretty much, physically in and mentally out for a while. And I think she knows, I think she knows that I know that she's really not into it anymore, that she's just in it because of my dad.
That's gotta be awkward.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know, I mean, just looking back on it, because I mean, she'll tell me Happy Mother's Day now.
Oh, really?
And she'll tell, my kids Merry Christmas, and she'll get them gifts.
See, you having kids, I bet that opened up something for her, because now, she had that Catholic upbringing, so she had the holidays and stuff. So I would imagine that having grandkids to celebrate that stuff with might help jar loose some of her original personality before the witnesses.
Yeah, and I think that definitely has a part in it too. But yeah,
wow.
I know I just wanted to kind of bring up the my dad, just getting so livid about speaking,
Oh yeah.
talking about an apostate and how, disgusting they are. And
well, a lot of that. So I mean, let's just talk about that real quick. A lot of that is because to one of Jehovah's Witnesses, their belief or their religion is their identity. It's not. I'm, I'll just say my name. I'm Mike Shimwell, and I'm one of Jehovah's Witnesses. It's Mike. I'm Mike Shimwell. I'm one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Like, there's not a lot of separation there. So when someone like one of us evil apostates starts speaking negatively, no, when we start speaking truth, inconvenient truths about what they believe, it doesn't impact them as though you're talking about a thing that they're around sometimes. They take it personally as though you are attacking them, the person, at their core. And that gets to a lot of concepts of ego and narcissism and things like that. But that's why they take it so personally and why they get so riled up, because they are Jehovah and Jehovah is them. They are Jehovah's Witnesses. It's such a personal thing, which is why it's so hard for a lot of people to shed later in life if they start to wake up to some of these inconvenient truths, because it is so wrapped up in who they are. And, they're look, in the end, they're cult victims too. They may be vitriolic toward those of us on the outside, and they can snarl their face up and say horrible things about us or whatever. And that's fine. It comes from oftentimes a place of insecurity, or because the cognitive dissonance comes up, and that's such a painful thing internally to deal with that they don't want to look at it. So it's easier to demonize the other person. So, they're going to feel how they feel, and that's okay. Sometimes that's part of the journey too, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I'm just glad that you are out, that your kids are out, that you have a chance at some real happiness in this life, that you don't have to farm it out to somebody else. And I hope that you make this life everything that you want. And whatever feelings your family may have towards you or anyone else, that's on them. You do you understand that, and you'll be okay. I think I speak for everybody in being proud of Nicole for overcoming the odds that were stacked against her in this situation. I really enjoyed talking to her as this bright and articulate person that, was just unfortunate enough to be born into some really tough circumstances. I love that she's living a new life and setting healthier examples for her own kids. If you'd like to leave Nicole a comment of support, feel free to do so at shunnedpodcast.com. Just go to the episodes page under this episode. You can also join the Facebook group called Shunned Podcast to discuss the episode, leave comments, or just join in and give support. I feel like I've really created a truly unique group, and those are the comments that I get from others, so there must be something to it. We really support one another in a personal way. You can also find the Shunned Podcast on podcast apps like Apple Podcasts, Podcast Republic, Podbean, Google Play Music, and more. You can also subscribe and listen on YouTube at Shunned Podcast, and hundreds of people listen that way. There's a player on the website at shunnedpodcast.com where you can listen, and you can also find the podcast on places like iHeartRadio, Spotify, Radio Public, Player.fm, Radio.com, and more. So it feels really good to get this out where more people can find these stories and learn about the real lives of people around them. I want to take a minute and thank all the people that have sent me birthday cards and other things. I turned the big 4-2 on August the 12th, and I had so much fun going to my post office box and picking up the cards and gifts and things that people sent me. A lot of the people I know from the Facebook group or emails, but some of you I've never interacted with in any way, and it was really cool to get things from people that I didn't know at all. I got handmade cards, I got funny cards, heartfelt cards. Somebody sent me some ice cream money. I got boxes of gifts. I got some personal photos, just, family photos of people just being happy after being out. And,
that stuff really meant the world to me. You all made this birthday special. It's not something that's easy for me to find something special in things. So you all really made it special, and I hope to do this again in the future. In fact, some asked me if I was going to keep the P.O. box open, so I've decided to go ahead and do so. You can find the address right on the contact page of the site at shunnedpodcast.com. So if you're an old school letter writer or you want to send a note or something, there's a place to do so. You can find anything mentioned here on the episode post at shunnedpodcast.com, along with the resources mentioned in this episode, how to donate if you choose to support the work I do. And, if you're feeling alone and want to talk one-on-one in a talk therapy scenario, I do individual coaching. You can reach out to me there as well. Please reach out. So many people go to therapists that don't understand them, that don't really understand where their issues come from, and I do, and I want to help. I love talking to people one-on-one and creating an environment where they feel understood, where we can identify patterns in life to be aware of and maybe start shaping a new and better life. You don't have to stay stuck. You can make a change. Just leaving the cult is step one. It's a beautiful thing, and it will get you out of a lot of bad situations. But we have a lot of recovery to do. And so you can do that one-on-one with me. You can also join the Shunned Recovery Project and start joining those groups. So I hope to see you there. I love doing this. I love you guys that listen. I love to help. So connecting in all these ways means a lot to me. I put a lot into all this. The theme song for the podcast is No Hell Yet by Fair Voyeur. And as we end all episodes, love others, do no harm, and go be happy.
Curse God